Right, good morning everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's great to see a full room, by the way. So yeah, a huge thank you to Jade and our sales team on pulling all this together, and to Pandi and his guys for organising sure everyone agree, a very good room. Let's have a little bit of a chat this morning. So the agenda for today, I'll pop it on the screen. So first off, for people who don't know me, my name's Sean White. I'm the Managing Director at Omnia Outsourcing. I'll chat a little bit around who we are. I know a lot of people in the room will be aware of ourselves, but for those that aren't, I'll just give a very quick overview. And then I'll pass over to Pandi, who'll introduce himself, his business, and talk us through what's going to be changing from April. Hopefully we've got a really good morning of tax, compliance and HMRC chat to talk through for you all, which definitely makes me and Pandi sound like the most exciting men in central London this morning. But yeah, hopefully there's some stuff that you can take away, and I'm sure that there will be. On questions as well, by the way, please do feel free to ask questions at any point throughout. It doesn't need to be wait till the end. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So if there's anything that you want to clarify as we go through, then please do feel free. So on Omnia, and this isn't intended to be a sell, but I think it's important to kind of just give a little bit of background about who we are and where we're at, for those in the room who maybe don't work with us as yet. And I think this will become important. Probably why I'm saying it as we go through the mornings. I think it's going to be credibility for supply chain is going to be a very big thing, and that's why I just want to mention a few of these things here. So we are one of the largest umbrella intermediaries in the market. Obviously, it's not a league table or anything for these kind of things, but we do speak obviously across the sector quite a bit, and I think it's safe to say that we're going along quite nicely. Specialising, again, a lot of people know within particularly umbrella and CIS within the construction sector, but we do have a bureau model as well, which obviously deals with various different clients of all sizes on their general bureau needs from month to month. And we will soon be launching a PEO model, probably for the new tax year, which may be something that even if you do work with us now, it's obviously will be a new product to the market. So feel free to speak to any of our sales team or who your normal contact is about that. Presence-wise, our main hub now is in Sheffield, and then we do still have obviously sites in Reading, across London, and we'll soon be launching presence into Scotland as well. So it's ever expanding on that front. Again, not league tables for this, but from speaking to, and there's certain people in the room who might see certain facts and figures about where payroll companies are growing. I do think that we've booked the trend massively over the past year, 45% year-on-year growth. Turnover's doubled massively, and this year we're expecting to do around about 450 million turnover. And again, that's not intended as a sell, but hopefully it comes across and gives people the confidence that they need in choosing to work with Omnia. And it's headed up by myself, as I mentioned, and most in the room probably know Jay. He's at the back there, and he'll. But we do have the majority of our sales team here today. So we've got Jess Campbell, who's our sales director, Flaherty, Coral, Darby Buck is somewhere around, there he is, Morgan, who looks after the bureau side, and then we've got Grace, our ops director, who a few of you will know as well. So I just wanted to touch on very briefly, obviously Pandi will chat around why this legislation is coming in from probably a HMRC and a revenue point of view, but I just wanted to touch on maybe some of the more specific day-to-day scenarios that we'll all see within the sector, and some of this might be a little bit obvious for people particularly working in recruitment, but for those not, just to give a little bit of context. So I think this legislation and general frustrations within the market are probably twofold, and one that perhaps is maybe overlooked a little bit sometimes is there's obviously potentially a very big impact on workers. I think we often focus on what the tax loss to revenue is, and clearly obviously that's the focus for revenue. But yeah, there's been multiple cases whereby workers have entered into schemes unknowingly, I'd probably argue that if you're getting promised 95% take-home pay, you should maybe ask a few questions. But yeah, and obviously then that can go on for years on end, and then they're getting pretty significant tax bills at the end of that. And there are also models out there that let's be clear, are exploiting particularly low-paid workers as well, whether it is utilising expenses to lower taxable income, or looking at other funky models whereby it might be stripping holiday pay, employment rights, access to pension, and things on those lines as well. So there's definitely an impact on workers, and as we go through, we'll probably chat around how we think that will change over the coming months. Recruiters, you probably don't need me, or certainly the majority in this room are recruiters, so you probably don't need me to chat too much on that, but yeah, you'll be aware of the frustrations in terms of when your sales staff are going out on site, coming back thinking they've got bookings, and then being told that they need to hit this rate, which on the face of it, and probably is a lot of in some cases, just not achievable. And the inconvenience of compliance, and obviously what I mean by that, to get to that point, and people maybe who aren't, we all know that there's hoops to jump through. And sometimes it probably is easier for clients, and I include umbrella companies in this because we'll go to certain agencies and we may ask for things to ensure we're compliant, and then one of our competitors who's maybe not doing stuff to the level that we are can, I don't know, just say chuck us a name and number and we'll sort everything out, is where we're obviously going to go through a lot more hoops than that. So that is pretty much it in terms of a little bit of an introduction. I'll kind of wrap up, but for now I shall pass over to Pandi, who will chat through the legislation for us.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you. Good morning, all. Hope you can hear me. It's so good to see so many of you turn out on a January morning with the beautiful weather outside. I don't know how many of you got lost going around Gray's Inn. It's not the easiest place to find, and you passed the first test of getting here, so well done on that. And secondly, to come and talk about HMRC and joint and several liabilities. I mean, what more can you do on a Thursday morning in London? No answers on that, please. There's lots of other activities you could do, I'm sure. Having said that, this is an important area. Certainly, if you're a practitioner like myself, I'm a barrister with, I think now, 23 years experience, particularly over the last 20 years on HMRC and how they prosecute, whether it's on civil, whether it's on criminal, and we're talking about starting with the Procedure Crime Act 2002, when it came out as a major piece of legislation, and how their powers have grown and grown and grown, and has grown in different areas. And that's where I've been I'm unusual in terms of barrister sense, because we do both civil and criminal. So often you find me focusing on what we call a quasi-criminal scenario. And in my view, joint and several liability is actually exactly on that spin in terms of where HMRC wants to go to and how they're developing their powers. And in terms of that, as an expertise and experience, we represented and have represented lots of different providers in the payroll sector, employment sector, recruitment agencies, and various people who often find themselves both at a corporate level, but also at an individual directorship level in terms of liabilities that arises, whether it's personal liability, whether it's a corporate liability in terms of PAYE, NIC, VAT, and so on. So that's the the background and interest as to why we are here and why we want to talk about HMRC, joint and several liabilities, and particularly the word that everybody gets excited about, enforcement powers. And often we find what the academic and the legislation, what that gives, and how it actually applied in practice is very different. And I know Sean has mentioned a lot of you here are recruiters. I haven't met many of you here. Hopefully after the seminar or during the seminar, we'll have a chance to speak. If you have any questions, particularly while we are going through it, please feel free to ask the questions as we go through. I want this to be as interactive as possible, and anything that is unclear, anything that you want to expand upon, please do so. So that's the background. But before I get into it, may I first of all say thank you so much to Omnia Group and Sean and Jay and Jade and team for putting together this excellent sort of opportunity to meet all of you and to discuss these issues. There are two ways to look at this, and what are the issues that we want to focus on. I'm actually going to take my mic. I'm not very good at standing still, as my daughter keeps telling me, so I'll be moving, so I'm afraid, forgive me for that. So 3 things that we want to focus on: umbrella companies and HMRC's review. And you know a lot about that. It's been going on for years and years and years. And secondly, looking at what is this joint and several liability? Is it actually new at all? Or is it actually a same old recipe that's been given to us, but into a different sector? And I can give you the answer to that is, yes, it's the same old thing. It's been going for last, I think since 2005-06, when we started doing the carousel frauds, when they brought in joint and several liabilities, and it's been increasing in a number of different areas. And of course, now we are in this umbrella sector, payroll and labor sector, where it's now been expanded into. And the third thing, I suppose the most important thing is, how do you navigate this joint and several liability come 6th of April 2026. I don't know how many of you here who are the directors or who are the owners of companies. Can I just have a show of hands as to how many? Well, see, that's quite a lot here. So I'm hoping that the last one will actually be significant of interest to you. And we will have to, again, learn from other areas of law where joint and several liability has been around for quite some time. And there is a lot of case law as to what you need to prove and what state do you need to get to. So those are the 3 areas that I want to cover. I'm very conscious that you're all industry experts. I'm very conscious that, no doubt, you have dealt with many contracts, many business interactions, many financial transfers in which you had to consider HMRC element to it. So if it sounds like I'm teaching Kranich how to suck eggs, please forgive me, because it is important to understand where we start from, and then only you can work out how to navigate it. The legislation is there in public, so I don't need to go through that in detail with you, but I rather want to use the time we have to look at the practical side of it, to look at how HMRC actually use it. And I hope I can give you a view on how the courts interpret it. I think that's, at the end of the day, is the most important one, right? It doesn't matter what HMRC views are. HMRC can have their views, their opinions, their assessments, their the view on what has actually happened. But at the end of the day, you still have to get to the court, depending on what type of court it is, what type of enforcement it is, whether it's criminal, civil, pure tax. You could be in different jurisdictions. And each one of them has different element to it. And I'll give you some examples of that as we go through. So I'm really hoping the purpose is not for me to sit here and set out what the Finance Act says about what the legislation is, but more looking at how do we deal with it? What does it mean for a business owners like yourself? What does it mean for industry people like yourself? And how do you actually look to ensure you are compliant? And I know the word compliance gets used all the time. I'm afraid you're going to hear that quite a lot today. So if there's one word you will remember by the time you leave here, not Sean or Pandi, which of course you should, but compliance is going to be the important one at the end of it. And how do we comply and what does it mean to comply is what I really want to discuss with you, and I want to use the time to do so. So looking at the history of it, is everybody aware of HMRC spotlights? Yes, no, hands up. I want to be interactive. So let's, if you're interactive, it makes me not fall asleep. So that's why. So you're doing me a favor. How many of you know about spotlights? Actually, I was expecting a lot more, actually. There's only about 5 I can see. I think a lot of you are shy and don't want to raise your hands, it looks like. If you don't know spotlights, please do look it up. It's publicly available. And when we get a handouts later on after the event today, we will make sure you have that. But it is really, really important. You as a business owners, you as people involved in umbrella companies or using umbrella companies or involved in temporary labor sector, you must be aware of the different type of spotlight that comes in, and particularly in supply chain. So if you look at the first one here, this is in 2018, 23rd of August, umbrella companies offering to increase your take-home pay. Of course, the whole purpose of these spotlights is just to educate people, is to educate businesses, educate people in the industry in terms of, as Sean said, if somebody's offering you 95% take home after your work, you may just want to reflect on that, because everybody did that, the government would be very poor, and we wouldn't have the roads and the hospitals and the education system we have. So these are really old news I'm just bringing to fore. So as you can see, the first one, 2018, umbrella companies offering to increase your take-home pay. Find out what to do if an agency umbrella offers to reduce your tax liability and increase your take-home pay. So it's simple things. Be aware. And then 2 years later, on the right-hand side, comparison and broker websites marketing umbrella companies are not always what they seem. It sounds like your mum talking to you, isn't it? Saying, well, no, don't trust anybody. Don't, if it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. And then you got 2022, warning for agency workers and contractors employed by umbrella companies. Find out about the tax avoidance arrangements. And the word arrangements is important. Again, I don't want to bore everybody with what arrangement means and what context that the word arrangement arises, and where does the liability sits with it. But it is important to bear that in mind. Then 2 years ago, warning for employment agencies using umbrella companies. Again, another take-home message to you or to the industry. Then last year, and this is an important one, warning for agency workers and contractors who are now moved between umbrella companies. All of this has been going on for quite some time, and there has been many consultations. There has many ways in which industry bodies and people involved like yourself could have partaken and given your views on what actually happens in real life on the ground. Because often these policies, these papers are done by people sitting at Petit France near Westminster. They don't have the same level of interaction with the people on the ground, workers' rights, what they can do and can't do. So often you have these policy papers. And you've seen these policy papers. I'm sure you'll all be familiar with it. Again, it's all publicly available. If anybody can't sleep at night, please read this. It will definitely send you to sleep. The one I recommend is this one, Umbrella Company Market, Changes to Income Tax Rules to Tackle Non-Compliance. And I think the word to focus for us is non-compliance today. Of course, you're all here not because you don't want to be non-compliant, you want to be compliant. No doubt HMRC are listening to this or be watching this, so I'll make that clear. All of you here because to ensure compliance happens, to avoid the non-compliance aspect of it. Now, you might think when they were doing the consultation, is there a need for umbrella companies at all? You might have thought to yourself, because the whole purpose of umbrella companies in terms of tax avoidance, tax losses, you can see they've been saying since 2018, spotlight after spotlight after spotlight, telling the public that there are problems with umbrella companies. So one of the key questions that people are involved in the industry like myself, we advise a lot of payroll providers, we advise a lot of umbrella companies and recruitment agencies and others who are involved in the labor sector. And one of the concerns we had was, are the government going to come out and say, well, get rid of umbrella companies? What was the answer to all of that after years of consultation? Anyone? They said, no, we want to keep the umbrella companies. Because if there is a problem of tax loss, and they say there's about 800,000, I'm just giving global figures, that's about 800,000 contractors are using umbrella companies, and they say loss anywhere between 500 million, 500 million plus. Some figures say 700 million, some say 500 million. These are significant figures, right? Even in one small sector. And the government had an opportunity, if they wanted to do so, to say, well, actually, we should ban umbrella companies, or we should ban the way they operate. But they did not do that. What they said instead is, actually, umbrella companies can carry on, but what we expect umbrella companies to do so, and to do so to ensure tax losses are stopped. And that's the question, how do we stop the tax losses? And in order to do that, where do we go and ask for the taxes that's missing, if taxes do disappear? And I think that's the starting point for today's seminar and this event is, how are we able to ensure as parties who are involved in supply chain to make sure we do not fall within these provisions, to make sure joint and several liability does not, come up the chain or come down the chain, whichever way you look at it, because it is looking at the whole of this chain as opposed to saying the good old days where you can say, well, nothing to do with me. We used umbrella company. Umbrella company was due to pay these taxes, whether it's PAYE, PAYE, NIC, any other taxes that the umbrella company was due to pay, they now disappeared. And lo and behold, one company has disappeared, and the next company has started. And we have seen similar problems of Phoenix companies, Phoenix directors, and industry which is heavily influenced by players, often not the forefront of running those companies. And what I mean is, you have directors, and you no doubt you all have seen it, who live abroad. Often you hear people say Filipino directors and other nationalities. I just mentioned that as an example. You could have directors from anywhere else in the world. There's nothing to stop a company that's trading. And often you have companies that trade significantly, but the director's never been to the UK. The director's never lived in Cotswold or never lived in a Glasgow, wherever it might be. And I think those are things to bear in mind. And that is why now we have this new finance bill, which is bringing in, as of 6th of April 2026, the ability for HMRC to say to the others involved in the transaction that if umbrella companies fail, for whatever reason, whether it's good, bad, ugly, deceitful, dishonest, whatever it might be, HMRC then can't just sit in the room and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Now they're saying, well, actually, we can do something about it. And this is where joint and several liability kicks in. So you as a finance individual, you as a recruiter, you as an end client, now have to sit back and think to myself, well, if I am using umbrella companies, what measures do I do to ensure that when HMRC look at it, whether it is now or 12 months down the line or 24 months down the line, how do I demonstrate proper compliance? And they have brought in 3 key provisions. Again, I won't bore you with them. You can look it up yourself. But I just want to look at the principles behind them, really. Section 61Y, umbrella companies, joint and several liability. And we have just discussed what the reasoning for that and how long it's taken. It's taken 8 years of discussions, 8 years of reviews, policy papers, many cases that if you look on the Finance Tribunal, upper chambers and the first tribunal, there's many cases on umbrella companies missing monies, missing tax. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is to look at who are the relevant parties in a chain. Again, that is very critical. So it's not a question of just saying to anybody who's in the company, well, you should be liable for it. There is a very specific definitions on who are the relevant parties to a transaction, to a temporary labor arrangement, to a actual employment. And I think one has to look at that. And the third one is purported umbrella companies. I mean, those are really looking at companies who do not obey and behave properly. And in those circumstances, can HMRC look at that and see how that can be done? So when you look at these 3 headline, if you cross through them, really what are they looking at? They're saying to umbrella companies, joint and several liability. Then looking at the people in the chain and saying they should also be responsible for paying the taxes. And then looking at the circumstances in which there may be problems and what appears to be an umbrella company is not actually acting as an umbrella company. And they give us different cases on that. So as I said, please do read it, but I just want to give you, these are the sort of the global points for us to consider today. And if you look at it, you have a worker, you have umbrella company arrangements, you have recruitment companies, then you have the end client. And today's purpose is really that joint and several liability is what we want to look at. And what are the circumstances in which HMRC will look at this scenario and say, should recruitment company or should the end client be responsible if the umbrella company, for whatever reason, is unable to pay, doesn't pay, or did not pay? And that's the question that we have to focus on. So in those circumstances, how many recruitment companies here? Put your hands up, please. Oh, it's quite a lot. Okay. How many people who might be end client using umbrella companies? Anybody here? Oh, that's right at the front here. That's good. Just you two, yeah. Don't be lonely, you know. So you've got end clients here. And those two group of individuals have to think, how is this legislation going to actually affect me? And what do I do to ensure from the umbrella company arrangements that I am protected? And it's just simply not good enough to say, well, I asked lovely Sean, are you good? And he said, yes, I'm very good, actually. You know, I got all these badges there. Look at it. And if you use me, everything will be fine. Well, it's not as simple as that. And you can imagine if it was as simple as that, we wouldn't be having to have this seminar. We wouldn't have to take interest and spend time, effort, energy, and money to come and actually think about this. So those are the points that we need to think about. Now, in terms of entering into arrangements, there are very specific provisions that the statute provides. And you can look at that in determining who are the relevant parties, you know. And in order for the joint and several liability to fall on you, you have to look at what are the umbrella company arrangements and has those conditions been met. And of course, we only have two end clients here, so we'll just ignore them for now. And if you look at all the other recruitment companies, the first is here, contract between umbrella company and client. So if that is the case, then one of the conditions is met. Contract between umbrella company and another person. So it may not be just the recruitment company, may not be the end client. There may be a third party involved in it. And then you have to look at what does the contract actually says. I often in practice, when we get cases landing on our desks saying, well, look, let's look at the contract between the umbrella company and the end client. Often what we find, again, we're talking about in circumstances in which HMRC have already decided there has been non-compliance. They have already decided there is sufficient evidence of tax loss, already concluded that this matter should proceed to recovery of some sort, whether we are looking at liquidation, whether you're looking at direct liabilities, or whether we are looking at personal liabilities of directors in certain circumstances. So when you look at that, you have to look at the contract and say, what are the services actually provided? And some of the contracts that I have seen in practice, what I get told as the contract that was provided and what's actually on paper is entirely different. And often happens because people just copy and paste and haven't changed it. I even still today see cases with contracts that hasn't taken into account Brexit. And how long has it been since we had Brexit? 2021 was the last date in January. If anybody remembers, that's 5 years ago. But the actual Brexit decision was that, anybody remember when was the Brexit voting? 16, yes, exactly. So the point about contract is the legislation now asks you to actually think about it. You know, it is not just a boilerplate. It is not just a simply question of saying, well, this is the standard plate, just change the name of the top there, and that's the end of that. You know, you actually look at what the contract is and what the service is provided, you know, and then look at, you know, the umbrella company is paid or otherwise provided with consideration for the services. I know Sean mentioned earlier how when you got the sales pitch going on and, you know, when you might be faced with companies who are saying, well, you know, don't worry about it, we'll sort everything out. You know, this is what you're going to have. So one of the considerations for you to think about is, you know, how is this actually working in practice? So what the legislation now asks you to think about is, it's not good enough just to say, well, you know, you want a checkbox list. I got a contract, I got a company, I got a client, the work is happening. But you have to go beyond that and actually look at it and see what does it actually say, how it's actually working in practice. Often you hear tax barristers talking about this and say, well, is this a real commercial arrangement? Meaning, does it actually work in practice? You know, and taking into account what the realities of basic contractual obligations. You know, and if the contract is not between the umbrella company and the client, who's the other person? Again, the same questions that get asked. You know, what are the provisions? You know, how are they paid? What is the commercial arrangement? and how does it reflect on paper. And as I say, particularly in cases involving criminal sphere, often the allegations of fraud arises when we look at the documentation, when we look at what the actual obligations of the parties are in terms of front and the back. These are sort of a very technical way the legislation has been drafted in terms of who the relevant parties are, and it sets out each and every aspect of it. But also in this legislation, there's reference to UK resident and non-UK resident. Again, that is really important to bear in mind, because I think this is an acknowledgement by HMRC, and of course, as a result, by the statute, of the problems that's incurring or has incurred in this market, where you have not just UK-based, UK taxpayers who are, I'm going to use the word, potentially creating problems. It's not that. We're actually having potential tax liabilities arising as a result of foreign players, at least on paper, foreign directors. And you all know the changes that's coming under the Companies Act in terms of foreign directors and identification, verification, and so on. So things are moving, and things are moving in a way where they're asked to think about, look beyond the actual documentation, look beyond the paper, look at actually what does it mean in practice. So when we go through to navigating it, managing it, and how do we actually deal with what are we actually doing. So in terms of navigation and management of joint and several liability, clearly use properly accredited companies. And often, we have cases where somebody who is entirely inexperienced, not used to a particular type of industry, comes into the industry and then suddenly has massive levels of income, turnover, client base, etc., etc. And one of the key considerations is, who are you actually dealing with? Of course, today, we are here with Omnia and discussions, and you can see their various accreditation. It seems to me, in reality, if you're looking at commercial arrangements as a recruiter, as a end client, as a third party who may be involved in a supply chain transaction, the question of due diligence is not something that you can either avoid, or it's not something that you can debate about. It is just part and parcel of your business. It is no different to turning on the gas and electricity or having a staff or a mobile phone or laptop. It is absolutely key component of demonstrating how and why you have chosen to partner with, whether it's a recruitment agency, whether it's an end client, anybody else in the supply chain. And that looks at ensuring your provider is fully transparent. And that's easy for me to stand here as a barrister and say this, but when you are making deals, when you're on the ground, and when opportunity arises, often, we see in practice, people are willing to turn the blind eye. People are willing to say, well, actually, the deal is too good to miss, right? Or something that I can deal with if a problem arises. Well, if a problem arises, just go and see Pandi afterwards. We'll deal with that. What the legislation now says is, think about who you're actually entering into financial, business, commercial transactions with. Obviously, using technology to ensure proper compliance to avoid tax losses. Of course, many of you probably use SafeRec and other companies to ensure that your RTI, to ensure that your actual data that you're using is a valid data. And what I mean by that is, we are so used to, if you look at 20 years ago, when we used to do large-scale tax evasion, tax fraud cases, we used to get tons of paperwork coming through our desk. It'd be volume after volume after volume. And of course, things have moved on now with the AI, now with the technology, and people like SafeRec. You are, in a sense, lucky, fortunate, and more importantly, from joint and several liability, you're able to demonstrate on the spot there has been a proper verification, because all these things are time-stamped, all these things are properly audited, and that is a key component that I encourage anybody, if you are seriously wishing to ensure that joint and several liability does not bite the company or the end client or the recruitment agency, anybody else involved in the supply chain. That auditing is something is absolutely important. Now, the other one that I have put there is legal due diligence. It's not a sales pitch from my perspective, but it is important, as I said, to look at the contract, to look at the arrangement, to look at what the clauses are, to look at indemnity clauses, to look at insurance clauses, to look at what does it actually mean. And even now, some of the other contractors and other players that we are advising, we're actually asking beyond the indemnity, how do you ensure if there is an inquiry, if there is a joint and several liability notice comes through, if there's a personal liability notice comes through, how do you protect yourself? Now, that is just the commercial side of it in terms of the legal tax compliance. There's also a real commercial in terms of mergers and acquisition, value of your company. So, for instance, if your company is doing really well and if you're subject of a merger or acquisition, one of the first questions barrister like me will ask is, look, what is your history of compliance? How do you demonstrate your compliance? Because that is going to make a difference to your valuation, isn't it? Because if you suddenly, after purchasing a company 3 years later, get a very large knock on the door by way of a HMRC bill and says, well, we believe you owe us number of millions because of X, Y, and Z, and because of joint and several liability. And now that would be a significant hurdle for you if you suddenly purchased a company or merge with a company and then to find your position in that. Does that make sense? So it's distinguishing between what the law requires in terms of tax prevention, tax loss, against you as business people, against you as people who are actually here to create value, increase income, increase profit margins, and so on. And then as part of you building your company, what I'm saying is this level of due diligence, this level of ensuring compliance is, in fact, it's not just to stop the tax evasion or just to stop the tax avoidance or just to ensure HMRC are happy with this. It's not that, actually. It is actually part of growing the value of your company, because going forward, post 6th of April, a lot of the questions is going to be, what was your company doing previously? How was your company complying during COVID? How was your company complying post-COVID? What happened in 2023, 24? And those are matters that HMRC can look at. Does everybody know how far HMRC can go back?
7 years.
So I can't hear.
7 years.
7 years, that's one. Anybody else?
20.
Who said 20? Good. On what basis?
If they deem to find there's been some fraudulent activity.
Exactly. So we have a number of cases where HMRC have gone back 20 years. And we had a couple in the tribunal going back to tax positions 1998, 1999. So this is not, I just want to make sure you all understand, this is not just a simple academic recital by me as to what the HMRC powers are. These are real stuff. And if they can go back, as you say, 7 years, that's a long time, correct? And if they can go back 20 years, that's hugely long time. I want to be retired in 20 years, so I don't even want to think about it. But these are real practical consequences of these legislation. Now, you mentioned 20 years, and that comes from the Procedures of Crime Act 2002, which has very specific provisions under sections, which allows tax recovery going back 20 years. Now, there are two other pieces of legislation. Again, this is not to scare you. This is not to give you negative vibes on Thursday, January morning. But this is just to alert and to ensure why we are actually talking about this. So far, we have only talked about HMRC tax avoidance, HMRC compliance, making sure the supply chain is properly protected. Now, apart from that, there are criminal powers available to HMRC. And in fact, many of you may have followed, last year, HMRC brought their first prosecution for failure to prevent tax evasion. Does anybody know? There's one accountancy firm in Manchester, together with 8 other people who are helping with research and development tax credit. I don't represent that. I'm just telling you what I know from public knowledge. Research and development credit and with a number of other people and COVID loans, bounce back loans, now they've been charged with failure to prevent tax evasion. Now, that's a major, major change. So when we talk about taxes here, when we talk about joint and several liability, I'm sure you're all asking this question. Can this actually be extended to any other area of law? Any answers? Any guesses? Yeah. Yes, for sure. Any no's? No, I think you're right. It is an absolute yes, because there are two key pieces of legislation which you must bear in mind. And that's the first one from Criminal Finances Act 2017, which made it very clear. Again, it's taken a very long time for HMRC to do anything. It's taken 8 years for them to bring a first prosecution, where failure to prevent tax evasion. So you...
For clarity on the definition there, is HMRC saying that the firm in Manchester was advising its clients to basically evade taxes? They then did the evasion, and because they advised them to do it, that was the crime?
That is my understanding. As I say, I haven't seen the case papers myself. I don't represent anybody there. But that is exactly what the statute says. Statute says if you as a barrister, solicitor, accountant, tax advisor, tax professional, if you engage in advice, and this is particularly important when you're talking about umbrella companies and what they offer and the sweeteners they give, if you are putting a advice through that would effectively allow at least a scheme or arrangement that would enable tax evasion, then you as a professional are at risk. There's no question about it. We already have a similar provisions under the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002, but this came in 2017, a very, very specific provision. And when you look at the rest of the world and how the professionals are protected, there's been a lot of debate about, again, I don't want to go away from the topic today, but it's really an interesting question, because how far does it allow professional advisors to properly advise? How far are you protected as an advisor, whether you're an accountant, tax advisor, or lawyer, or barrister, whatever it might be? In many jurisdictions have absolute concrete indemnity, or immunity, I should say, against you as a professional advisor, but not here. We don't have that. So it's really important. So what I'm saying applies equally not only to you as a business owner, business directors, managers, and involved in sales or whatever it is, but also equally to professionals like us. That's the first one. And the second one, again, Corporate Transparency Act that came in. Since September, we have the offense of failure to prevent fraud. Again, that's a very significant one. Often when I speak to people, they're not aware of these two major pieces of legislation because it hasn't really been utilized that much by HMRC. But what I see in practice now, a lot more ability, or at least the appetite to use different things. So just to give you an example, I was in court on 2 days ago, HMRC tax evasion case, and often, it's very much you're in breach of X, Y, and Z regulations, you haven't done PAYE and this and that. But on this particular occasion, they were quite innovative. They were bringing in fraud charges, criminal fraud charges, under the Companies Act, individually, rather than just simply saying fraud because you utilized the company in a particular way. So what I'm starting to see in practice is much more innovative use of the powers that HMRC has. So when we talk about enforcement powers, I just want you all to be alive. It is not just simply looking at 6th of April and saying, well, how do I do it, making sure that I get out of joint and several liability. I think if you are a business owner, you are a director, you're a finance director, you have to think broader than that and think to yourself, actually, it's not just simply the tick box exercise that I'm used to, or tick box exercise when I'm in a boardroom settings when we're discussing. It actually has got broader consequences. And how do I protect myself against that? And those are the things that I really want you to apply your mind to. Those are the things that I would like you, and when we go through the next seminar or next event, I really want to focus on when the corporate liability at the top arises, not only in the joint and several liability, what are the other areas can it also arises? And we have seen that. If you look at carousel fraud and VAT, we have seen that COVID, furlough fraud, and we have seen that on other bounce back fraud areas where they have included it. And as I say at the beginning, joint and several liability is not new. It is an old recipe that's been put out again, but it is really, really, really an important, powerful, and courts the way used. Again, I'll do it on the next seminar. I don't want to bore you too much today. There's a lot of case law on how it's actually used and what sort of evidence that the court expects and what sort of, as I say, the commercial arrangements is a key component and key driver in looking at it. It's often say, well, if it looks like an elephant in a room and sounds like an elephant in a room, usually it is. And it's the question as to, how far do you ask those difficult, relevant questions? And often people don't want to do that. And those are sort of the areas that we need to look at. Again, just expanding a bit more on that, these are the sort of practical things you can do. Look at the company. Look at how long it's been trading. Look at what financial capacity does it have. Who are the directors? I already mentioned about foreign directors. And how do we do that? Look at HMRC tax avoidance list. Is everybody familiar with that? Yes, I can see quite a few nods. If you're not, please use that. It's a really good list. It's again public, again is regularly updated, and is one of the things that I always tell my clients, I expect you to do that. It is just a basic foundational stuff you can do, but even better now with the AI, AI agents, they can do that for you and send you a report every morning if need be. So there's plenty of opportunity for you to do that. Look at the spotlights, which we mentioned earlier. They come regularly. I actually find them very helpful. I think they're good. It gives you an indication as to what HMRC are thinking. It gives you an indication as to how HMRC view a particular sector. Of course, for the purpose of today's discussions, I've only put forward all the stuff that's relevant to joint and several liability umbrella companies, how the payroll sector works and what are the problems with it. But there are other areas for you to look at, which may be broader than what we're talking about today. 4 is really the important one. Transparency in relation to tax payments, real-time information. And we mentioned SafeRec, and there'll be other. Is anybody here from SafeRec? No. So how many of you use SafeRec? Yes. So you all know the ability of companies who can give that stamp of approval at least, or at least demonstrate that you made the right efforts in looking at that. And look at supplier audit framework. And what I mean by that is, again, have very clear process, clear thinking, clear understanding of how you will be doing work with your partners in the supply chain. Because one of the questions that often gets asked in court is, well, why did you choose this particular company? Why did you choose this particular provider? Why did you choose this particular contract? All of that goes back to the provisions, the clauses that arises from it. Number 6, staff training and review. It's absolutely critical. I mean, events like this, of course, I hope it helps. I hope it makes you think. I hope it makes you understand the sector we are in, understand the problems as well as the solutions that can be provided. I think staff training is critical. Often we see people in cases when they come to give evidence and being cross-examined, they will say, well, actually, I wasn't trained on this. I didn't know anything about it. Because there's no mandatory requirement for you to do, unlike, for example, lawyers or other professionals, there is what we call continuing professional development. I always advise our clients in these sort of industries, staff training, review, regular checks is absolutely critical. And I think that's the way knowledge cannot be underestimated, particularly when you're looking at joint and several liability, looking at supply chain, looking at what efforts did you make. Legal due diligence, I often put that in because it is important to look at what the framework actually is. It's important to understand what the clauses are. It's important to understand who's giving indemnity. It's important to understand, is there an insurance provision? And if there is an insurance provision, what does that insurance actually cover? And what sort of protection does it cover you as a recruitment agency or you as the end client? And it's really, really critical because these are things that nobody wants to sit and read on any given day. Never mind on a day like today. You know, usually people leave it to somebody else, like us, to deal with. So it's really, really critical that we have that in mind. And of course, the insurance I already mentioned to you. As I said, there's many areas that we'll be looking at in the next seminar in terms of how do we actually protect yourself? Where does the liability actually arises? What does it mean in practice? As I say, we got one element of tax collection, tax avoidance, ensuring compliance with joint and several liability. Then you have the broader element of, as a directors, as a corporate liability in terms of Criminal Finances Act, corporate liability in terms of Transparency Act, and that leads on to, of course, is the personal director's liability. And piercing of the corporate veil is something that the HMRC would love to do, and often they're successful in doing, because those are the matters in which they can trickle down, percolate, and pierce through the companies and say, well, you are responsible for, if you're the sole director, sole shareholder, and if you're the top management, the Corporate Transparency Act says, if you're the top layer in the company, you have responsibilities. It is not just simply to say, well, I'm not the director, I'm not the nominated director on HMRC, so therefore nothing to do with me. Well, those days are gone. So those are the things that I would want to discuss, and hopefully see you all on the next one. We can go through that. And let me just check my time. And I think I've taken quite a lot of time. Sure. So I'm going to stop for now. Very happy to deal with questions. Very happy to give you guidance. Anything that, if you don't want to discuss openly in the group, please find me afterwards. I'm very, very happy to chat through. Thank you very much for being so attentive. I'm very, very pleased to be able to speak to you, and look forward to your questions. Thank you. Just mind the wire.
You get my slides?
Yeah. Of course, you can just put the other slides, please. Yeah, there you go.
Cheers.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks, Pandi. I'm sure everyone agree that's such a comprehensive overview of where we're at, and I'm certainly very glad you've taken that bit on, because you can articulate it far better than I'd have been able to. So I just want to talk pretty briefly around. Obviously, Pandi's kind of prevented the problem, so to speak. So hopefully, I can just chat around a little bit around how Omnia can now provide some solutions for you. Again, apologies if this is repeating a touch for people who work with us very closely, but there are a number of people in the room who don't. So at Omnia, and this isn't generally to sound too cheesy, but compliance generally is at the heart of everything that we do. And even if that wasn't the case, it certainly would need to be coming into April 2026. I'm pretty comfortable to boast a little bit here and state that, in my opinion, that we were probably the first major umbrella company to go down the SafeRec route back in the summer of 2024, and quite a number have followed since. So I think we were down the right path there. I'll chat a little bit more about SafeRec in a second. I know Pandi's already mentioned it as well. FCSA, we've been FCSA certified since 2019, Jay? 19? 20? Yeah, a number of years anyway. And FCSA, look, I will chat about SafeRec, but FCSA still has a massive place in our market. Pandi mentioned about contracts, and believe me, from doing the audit, the FCSA drilled down on every detail in our contracts. So having that accreditation as well should hopefully give you guys a peace of mind that we're absolutely sound on that front too. We also engage with a company called Trinity Tax, and we do have Kai and Sarah from Trinity Tax here if you want to stick an arm in the air, guys. And again, they just give us another layer of kind of reassurance, that certainly around engagement with CIS workers, which again, I know a lot of people in the room will have a number of those. And again, I don't think you guys have an issue. If from an agency point of view, these guys work with agent recruiters a lot as well, and this is completely independent to Omnia to look at your supply chains, to look at your contracts, look at your engagement with your clients as well. So I'd definitely encourage having a chat with those guys to see if it's something that you guys can implement into your businesses as an additional layer of protection for you. We're currently in the process as well of getting the Workforce Assured accreditation, which may be something that's familiar with people in the room, particularly if you're in and around rail and some construction areas, which is another audit for us to go through. And I spent pretty much the whole day on Tuesday going through a range of fun stuff. But on a serious note, it is again another accreditation that will display our commitment to making sure that you guys are covered. REC and SIP members as well. A couple of additional points away from this general accreditation. So we've actually got Paul from our software providers, My Digital, here, and they're in the process of launching a client portal. So anybody that's working with us, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you will be able to log into the portal and you'll be able to see your individual liabilities from a pay-as-you-earn and NIC point of view in real time.
Correct.
Yeah. Again, so that's going to be something that we'll be able to work with you on to make sure that you've got the information, and then obviously we'll be able to display that those liabilities are being paid across to HMRC in real time as well. As part of that, we're going to be introducing a direct assigned monthly report, which will display all those, and it'll be syncing with SafeRec, but it'll be signed by probably myself. Again, with screenshots of our HMRC accounts, just as an additional layer that we're doing what we say we're doing. It's clearly going to be really important for recruitment agencies post-April to know that that's happening, and we're absolutely committed. I think, again, Pandi mentioned about transparency, and we're absolutely committed to that and making sure that you guys are as comfortable as you possibly can be on that front. Also, training, we're in the process of appointing an in-house trainer, and that individual will be tasked with coming out into your businesses. I know recruitment consultants are probably not too fussed on learning some of these things, but clearly it's going to be very, very important, and hopefully we can just give a little bit of information across to you guys and your teams, and to make sure that they're not cutting any corners. That, you know, obviously some of you work for really big recruitment agencies. It's quite difficult to police recruitment consultants at the best of times, I can imagine. But yeah, we're more than happy to kind of come out and make sure that your teams have got those bits of information. So I do want to talk about SafeRec a bit. It was actually quite interesting when Pandi asked how many people were utilising SafeRec. There wasn't that many hands that went up. So that is clearly something that I think we can work better with you guys on. SafeRec should be a great tool for any recruitment agent here post-April. Now, you will all be getting the kind of report on the right-hand side here every month. Does that look familiar to anybody? Does anybody see them within their business? No, so we definitely need to have a chat and make sure that these are coming through to the right people within your businesses, because they will be going out, and obviously we may have multiple different contacts within your agencies. So please do speak with us again, and if you're director level compliance, you need to be making sure that you're getting hold of those reports. One, because it's going to give you a really good overview of everybody that's been paid via ourselves for your agency for each monthly period. Obviously, with Omnia, it's always fully green, and that's genuine. And that's going to mean that it'll give you, again, the evidence that the workers are being paid accurately. All of their pay-as-you-earn, NIC, holiday pay, pensions, app levy is all being calculated correctly and displayed on the payslip. And equally, or possibly more importantly, the other part of this audit. So these audits, even if we pay everybody correctly each month, SafeRec will not send these audits out until they've been into our HMRC account, and they've then audited that we've paid all of our liabilities over. So if they see anything in there and there's unpaid amounts or payments aren't up to date, these won't go out and we'll lose our certification. Additionally, and again, not that we need motivation for it, but part of our contract with SafeRec, and this will be the same with anybody else that is SafeRec, if you lose your SafeRec certification, they will literally email every single client that you've got and tell them. So yeah, we're pretty motivated to make sure that we're on track with this. Obviously, they've got all of our client data as well, so it's pretty straightforward for them to do. Any questions on SafeRec? Or I feel like everyone in the sector is kind of aware of it, but were people aware of what it went into in terms of the depth and stuff like that?
I didn't realise how comprehensive it was. Someone told me it was just another layer, but it's obviously really important. The payroll companies use it at the moment and with them as well. So
Yeah.
I'll be finding out if we're getting them.
Yeah. I mean, they will definitely be going through, and look, there's multiple contacts, and like I say, with ours, please do speak to us, and we'll make sure that they're going to the right people within your business. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who was wanting to know basically everything that the SafeRec report contains, but they weren't aware, and it was obviously going somewhere else in the business. So please do speak to us, and it's a great tool. Obviously, you can then show that to your clients and stuff as well. I'll chat a little bit more about some of the stuff we'll do on that as well. But yeah, especially if you're getting audited from your clients and they're going to want to know this information, you might be scrambling around for pay slips from us, stuff like that, when actually you can probably just send that, and then it's going to be a lot more straightforward for everybody.
Do the workers get copies of that?
Yes.
So they've got login details to it, or they get it issued via email?
Yeah, so every week they'll get an email saying, here's your payslip audit, and again, it'll just display to them that they've been paid correctly, compliantly.
Sure, I'm very much a layman in this, but in terms of SafeRec, Pandi mentioned that as a director of a company, I'm liable for checking into umbrella companies and seeing if they're legit or not, or how legit they are.
Yeah.
Does SafeRec provide almost like an independent list? I mean, they're assessing everybody.
Yeah.
Do they provide a list of, I go to that for checker trader and just is there a list available from an independent industry body that, means I don't make a mistake by going, to a certified company? I know there's FCSA.
So SafeRec will be, I guess, backing up what they're doing with an insurance-based product, which I believe is due to be live
Next week.
Okay, next week. But in terms of, are you talking more about due diligence and stuff?
Due diligence has been done on all the companies that are competitors to you. Or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, so absolutely. So
Rating?
yeah, again, so speak with us on this, because within SafeRec, they provide a due diligence report. So we can get you login, I'll just show you where you need to go for that. And then any suppliers that you are using, as long as they're SafeRec certified, you'll be able to drop them down and it'll send through. It's about a 36 page due diligence report. And again, along with the FCSA accreditation, that'll just display that contractually we're sound, engagement-wise we're sound. And then if you double that up with your monthly reports, you already get into a pretty comprehensive due diligence.
I don't use it at this stage. I'm saying I'm looking for an umbrella contract company.
So they will definitely have on their website all of their certified members. Yeah, and the FCSA are the same as well. We could just use Omnia.
Don't they have an ability to drag and drop a payslip in so you can see?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can
So
check if somebody's payslip looks okay.
yeah, and it's a really good point. So again, particularly if you have a competitor maybe, or if I think I mentioned at the start, whereby if you're on site and they say, and I've done it with loads of our competitors as well, you can drag and drop a payslip in there, and it'll give a pass or a fail. I mean, in that situation, you're probably going to have your suspicions, but it's a really good tool, because if it does come back with a fail, obviously you can then go back to the client, say this is why they're so much cheaper than us. It's because they're not compliant, basically. So it is a good tool. Have you used that, John? Or
I was only shown it this week. I met Seb and Sam.
Okay. Yeah.
So they showed me the reports, etc., but that was one of the key features that you could check.
So is that now available in the agency environments? I know that we can do it as an umbrella company.
He said I could do it if I
Okay.
sign up for it, but
Yeah.
he said I could do it.
Yeah, and we definitely can. So if you don't want to, let us know. We can do it and send you the report back. Any more questions on SafeRec stuff? So just a few other bits on kind of due diligence, because this is probably going to be the main area for a lot of people in the room in terms of minimising your risk. Like Pandi said, this probably shouldn't be kind of unique to JSL. I think these have been good practices for some time, but clearly that's going to be heightened as we move into April. I'm probably going to come across as a touch biased on this, but I do think that accreditation, SafeRec and FCSA are an absolute minimum. I don't believe there's a valid reason for any payroll company out there not to have those, unless they're doing stuff that they probably shouldn't be, regardless of what they may or may not say. But those two accreditations, they're they're the flag bearers within the sector. There are other ones, but I would say those two, and I think those two don't dilute the market as well, and they probably make it more consistent across the board.
Do you have to trade for a certain amount of time before you can be accredited by them?
SafeRec, no. FCSA is 2 years, I believe. I was last time, so yeah. Is it still 2? Yeah. But it would be, and this isn't to kind of put people or new people coming into the market away either, but it would be difficult to get them off the bat. There's a lot of work that needs to go into them. I think SafeRec is a minimum of 150 contractors as well. Yeah, 150. Glad you can. Yeah, so there's a few prerequisites, but nothing overly major. Payroll models, again, I mentioned this earlier, and Pandi quite rightly pointed out some of the spotlights on the HMRC website. There are some payroll models that are still prominent within the market that are definitely appearing. Do you know what spotlight the kind of the hybrid model is, where you split for tax and employment? Because that's been on the spotlight, hasn't it?
It has. Yeah, I'll look it up now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's definitely some stuff there, and I know that particularly within construction, they can be quite prominent. Again, I'm probably obviously going to say this, but my advice and my personal opinion would definitely be, if you're utilising those, then now, or certainly April, is the time to be moving away from those. Due diligence, Pandi mentioned it as well, but a lot of the stuff they've kind of already touched on, and it's probably a personal feel for you guys as a recruitment agency. Obviously, the accreditations help. Obviously, I mentioned about what we're going to provide monthly. We'll be as transparent as we need to be for any of you guys. But yeah, again, simple science. If payroll companies are not willing to be open with their information, or they're cagey, or they're not accredited, then straight away that's probably going to start ringing some alarm bells. Are they proactive? And I'd like to think clearly we're on the front foot here. Hosting a session like this and taking time out to do it, and there'll be other bits that we'll be looking to do, and that you'll all have access to over the coming weeks and months as well. I mentioned at the start, strong market presence and share, and I do think that is going to be important as we go into April. I would be very surprised if the umbrella market doesn't shrink in that time. I think more and more recruitment agencies are going to be looking to work with some of the bigger guys and the more credible within the market, for obvious reasons. Credit safe, site visits. Site visits are an interesting one. Does anybody go out to their payroll companies' offices, or is it something that's ever done? No? It's probably not necessarily a terrible thing. I even know up until... Well, that was going to be my next thing. So look, if it's a telltale sign, right? If they've not got a presence here, then it's clearly going to be elsewhere, and then more alarm bells. Nice.
I didn't know it was permanently.
Right. Yeah. Well, it wouldn't surprise me, to be fair. So site visits are a great tool, and again, we're more than happy to accommodate that if anybody fancies a trip up to Sheffield. Frequency of reviews, this is probably very subjective, and it will differ from any of you guys. Like I mentioned on several occasions, we will be proactively doing stuff every month back to you guys alongside our SafeRec reports. But yeah, you're going to come up with your own DD checklists. We can help with that. We're going to have a toolkit coming out within the next week or so, maybe a little bit longer, which is going to help you guys. But that's going to be obviously a decision for you guys, whether you're going to be doing that monthly, quarterly. If it was me, I don't think I'd be going any longer than quarterly with this legislation now. I know in the past it's probably been kind of annually at best in some cases. It probably needs to be a lot more regular than that these days. And a clear alignment, I think, of supply chains. I think from off payroll a few years ago, that brought payroll companies and end clients and recruiters more close than they were before. And I think, and I would hope that this will have the same impact come April as well. And I think there is a need for us all to be working more closely together. Like I said, I do think that's changed. I think it's a less transactional kind of relationship in a lot of cases now, and I think that will continue to be the case as we move past April. Just going to chat very quick about some of our commercial partnerships as well. So particularly American Express. So we're the preferred payroll partner across the UK for Amex. Is everyone aware that they can pay invoices via Amex for ourselves? There's probably a number that do. But yeah, please do speak to us if that's something that you want to utilise. Obviously, there's quite big benefits in terms of points back for that, and it's similar with Capital on Tap as well. And we are also channel partners with InSync, and that's probably more of a subcontractor benefit that some of your workers may have benefited from. We do also have a new product launching within our group called Advancia, and Josh, very smartly dressed gentleman in the corner, is here from Advancia today. And this is an early wage access app. And this is probably more one for internal staff as opposed to contractors, just with the timing of obviously how funds move around there. But we have it in Omnia. It was great for our internal staff around Christmas, as people maybe wanted a little bit of access to their wages a touch earlier. You have full control on the spends within that and how that's then recouped as well. So it doesn't need to be that Jenny's going to take 95% of the wages and there's going to be in that constant involvement for months on end. We have it set at 200 quid, I think it is. So it just allows people to be able to dip into their earned wages a little bit early if they have a crisis, or if their washing machine breaks, tyre pops, whatever it might be. And again, Josh will be able to chat a lot more on this, but there's a lot of research that's gone into this and on how it will help employee attraction and retention as well. And they are sponsoring drinks at the bar, which is why we had to mention it, but we would have done it anyway. Finally, as well, before you leave, there is a QR code there for a WhatsApp channel that we're going to set up. So please do scan that. You're not going to get bombarded every day with please use Omnia or anything like that. But we will, as we kind of go through over the next few weeks and months, we will be providing content in there. And it'll be documents that you can then use with your end clients. I was chatting with John earlier on that as well. So there will be some hopefully useful information that will go into that you can then use within your teams and, like I say, to your clients as well. And we kind of want that to try and be a little bit of an industry chat. So if you come across anything, or if you hear of any weird, wonderful scheme and you want to run it by and it's easier to chuck it in there, then please do feel free to do so. So yeah, please do scan that QR code before you leave today. That is pretty much it, unless there's any questions. And questions don't necessarily have to be on JSL. We can chat around any of the fun stuff, employment rights bill and all those exciting bits if you want to, or just anything general. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please fire away. Yes.
Could you give a practical example of where the liability will fall down the supply chain?
What, with non-compliance?
Yeah. So for you guys, I guess, being fully compliant, safe rec, etc., how would a liability fall down to us, and does it go down to the end client if we can't do anything about it?
The first bit I'll take. The second bit I'll probably pass to Pandi. We could. You're not complete. There is no way to be completely safe here. I think that's probably fair to point out. There has been and there will be examples of accredited members who have gone from 1 week to the next. So really, it's managing that, and that's why I think it's really important, why I've mentioned a few times, that monthly we'll be providing these reports to make sure that financially we're always sound.
There's a window of opportunity for Jay to take all the money out of the bank account and bugger off to the mortgage.
He's not allowed in the bank account. neither am I, by the way. But no, you're absolutely right.
So do we then become liable because you've gone bust?
Yeah,
but
correct.
Surely we can't prevent that.
Well, welcome to JSL. That's the whole point. Sorry, yeah.
That's all right.
Let me answer the practical side of it. Again, JSL in this sector hasn't come in yet. So I can give you examples from other sectors where, for example, VAT, carousel fraud, that's a classic one, where, again, exactly the same response can be given. You're on a supply chain, you get your VAT, you pay it, you give it to the person that's supplying it, and then lo and behold, you have a missing trader. And you would be sitting there in that chair and say, well, I did everything I could, I was asked for this, I paid it, and I did it. And HMRC then say, well, why did you use that supplier? What did you do in terms of basic due diligence? And how are you actually involved with somebody who disappears in the chain? And there are a number of cases in missing trader fraud, in carousel fraud, where the courts have up and down the country have looked at it very clearly and said, it is your responsibility to ensure that if you are involved in a supply chain, you're with the right people. And that goes to the accreditation, that goes to transparency, that goes to due diligence, that goes to commercial arrangements, the activities that you actually do. So how it would work here is if you as an umbrella company, as Sean says, if you're a non-compliant umbrella company for whatever reason, whether you're negligent, whether you're dishonest, whether you are deliberately set out to defraud people, whatever it might be, what the legislation says is in practice, if X umbrella company disappears, come for the sake of argument 1st of May, and there was a trade between 6th of April and 1st of May, and HMRC under the new act would be entirely allowed to look at the supply chain. That could involve company X, that could involve company A, B, C, and they would have to look at the facts. The investigating officer would have to look at the factual scenario before the legal scenario and say, well, I can't get it from the umbrella company because they have disappeared and we've got the 2 tax experts here. Then they can look at it and say, well, actually, where can we look at in the supply chain? Can it be the recruitment agency? Can it be the end client? Can it be the other person, the word, that definition of the other party, other person? And that's when they have to look at it. And of course, they have to look at it very fact specific to ensure what you did. And in those sort of scenarios are the things that Sean has been saying and what I've been saying becomes really important. So if a HMRC officer, an investigating officer, let's say, not a tax compliance officer, I'm not talking about the calculating the figures, we're talking about the officer who's involved in looking to ensure there is no dishonesty or no fraud or no misrepresentation or no bad behavior or using the tax non-compliance behavior. And they will look at to see how you engaged in this particular model. What model did you actually engage in? What was the red flags? Was the company based out of Maldives or, or Mauritius or Philippines or, wherever it might be? Can the director speak English, for example? That's a good one often, people we see in real cases. So those are sort of the factors HMRC will look to see, is this a case in which joint and several liability powers should be extended to the parties involved in the chain. Of course, I'm giving all extreme examples just to demonstrate the point. In real life, it's not as clear-cut as that. In real life, there's been a lot of grey areas and a lot of questions and uncertainty. And of course, often you may be asked to provide the information, whether you're asked to provide voluntarily, compulsorily, or other HMRC powers in terms of requesting information. Those will determine whether it is appropriate in the circumstances to extend that JSL liability. Does that make sense in practical? No, oh, okay.
All I'm trying to say is that there's a reputable recruitment agency. We have a very, very strict PSL.
Yeah.
Omnia is obviously on it.
Yeah.
But if they don't pay their tax liabilities, there's nothing we could have done about that because we check safe reports, etc.
Exactly. Yeah.
They then don't pay it for one period. They then go bust. Somebody has walked away with the money. How can that joint and several liability fall down to us as an agency when we've done all the due diligence, we've paid over the money to them, and they then just haven't paid it over to HMRC? I just want to understand how much of it is at risk for us, and then for us as an agency, if it's decided that, well, you've got to pay it again, if we then can't pay it and we have to go into administration, does it then go down to the end client?
Yeah, sorry.
I think possibly what you're saying is that in reality, the investigating officer would look at the facts, would determine that you had selected a reasonable company and that they had the accreditations. Jay was a rogue agent, and you couldn't have predicted that. And therefore, it was not reasonable to to allocate you as
Yeah.
responsible party and with someone else. I think that's
Effectively, because you can never, if somebody deliberately wants to commit a fraud, nobody can stop that. It's simple as that. And it doesn't matter whichever sector you're in, whether you're banking, finance, accountancy, legal. I mean, we have a case with a law firm that the lawyers defrauded 64 million. There's a case called Axiom Inc. So if somebody deliberately sets out to do it, there's nothing you can do about it. But the answer to that is exactly what you said. What are your processes? What are the steps you took? What are the things that you did to ensure that a competent, reasonable, proper recruitment agency would have done? That's the test. It's a reasonable man test. You know, it's what we call, pardon the pun, it's what we call in lawyers' term is being on the omnibus, you know, a man on the Clapham omnibus test. You know, would a reasonable recruitment company with all the ability to check and powers would have used Omnia, or would have used Jay, who's just run off to Maldives again, you know? So that's the test. So again, it goes to the point, as I was saying, it's not me and you decide that. It's that investigating officer sitting in Newcastle Fraud Service, FIS, or in Birmingham, or in Newcastle, or Croydon, who would sit in an office thinking, well, is this a reasonable behavior by you? That's the way they would approach it. Of course, then you get to the court, then we get an opportunity to cross-examine, ask these relevant questions as to whether the decision made by those HMRC officers are reasonable and fair in the circumstances. So I think that's a question there. I'll let you answer.
Well, just to finally come back, so on the transfer, then yes, as part of this, if agency then also goes, they can then move up the chain. And obviously that could look very different if there's MSPs involved, and you've got those, and then through to end clients as well.
We're basically saying that this legislation that's coming is similar to the KIT principle from that point of view, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah, because you have to look at the chain and see.
I had fun one of them 9 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Told HMRC to do one,
But you understand how KIT
it's a 2-year process.
is a tedious process.
Going through a review where somebody disappeared and we paid the back.
Yeah. So Kittel is a,
Then not paid it.
sorry, apologies, cutting across you. But yeah, Kittel is a great example of how it's been used in other areas where joint and several liability has come in. And they have used this European legislation to non-stop end to look at ways in which to collect monies, not from the missing trader, not from the first line, but from number of lines above or number of lines below. And because the European judgment on Kittel allowed that, and has been authorized on many occasions, on many challenges, and that's a good example of the sort of things that I would be discussing on the next one, when we look at the comparison of how it's been used in other areas and how HMRC will say, well, we should use it in this umbrella market. And it goes to this gentleman's question. If somebody becomes a bad player for whatever reason, then where does it go? The second tier, whether it's a recruitment agency, and then, of course, go the ultimate client end. And then the question is, if you can't recover from all of those three chains, where do you then go to? Do you then go to the personal liability in terms of personal liability notices or other mechanisms to recover? Good.
Any other questions, anyone? Yeah.
We're focusing here obviously on umbrella companies. Is there any possibility that this could get extended out to, say, a small company that was trading with a limited company, left their IR35 decision to the limited company? If that was too good to be true, and that limited company, or sorry, hiring company knew that person's not working for anybody else, been there 5 years,
Yeah.
could that be extended out?
You can correct me if I'm wrong. No, in terms of this piece of legislation, because this will be defined on what's an umbrella company. However, you're still then triggering back to off-payroll rules, so it'd be caught by that. If the example, if I think I'm understanding the question correctly, then you're back to off-payroll. So instead of it being assessed on this piece of legislation, it'd be assessed on off-payroll, and then the liability is actually still the same, where it would go back up the supply chain anyway.
Yeah,
Agreed?
absolutely. I think it goes to the definition of umbrella company arrangements, the word they use, and it's got very specific definitions under the legislation. But of course, HMRC have much broader powers to enforce it in any event.
Yeah. Any more? No? Cool. Right, so we'll probably wrap it there. So we have organised. Sorry, I thought you can say something there. We've organised some networking drinks. There's where is it?
It's just City of York, literally come out of.
Oh
here.
yeah, we've walked past it on the way in.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
so
just
you're
outside the arch on the right hand side. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll please do come along, and hopefully we can have a chat and maybe talk about some stuff that's not tax compliance bits. I'm sure everyone's probably had a little bit of that. But thanks for coming, guys. It's been an amazing morning. Hopefully you've taken something away from it.